Mainstream media outlets are literally buying stories. Trump has been acquitted, and Minneapolis couldn't stand their own policies. I'm Josiah Everton, and this is The Glorious Rescue.
Aren't you tired of feeling forced to choose between staying informed and being indoctrinated? Listen to the condensed news cycle without the lies, agendas, and confusion from the mainstream media, all while engaging in deeper discussions about the principles that have influenced our great nation. This is what rescuing America looks like. This is The Glorious Rescue.
Here we are, another episode of The Glorious Rescue. I just want to say a very, very hearty thank you. Thank you to all the listeners and those of you who are sharing these episodes. It is greatly appreciated. And we have lots to go through, lots to cover today in today's episode because we really haven't gone through the news cycle for the past quite a little bit. So thank you for bearing with me. Also, I do hope you enjoyed last episode, which wasn't necessarily an episode. I'm not counting it as an episode, more so just counting it as a video. I hope it was slightly entertaining for you. And let me know, you can always head back to that last episode. Let me know in the comment section what you want to see next. This first headline, not necessarily calling it a headline, but just more so a tribute to Rush Limbaugh. And if you've been anywhere in the news cycle over the past few days, you will know that Rush Limbaugh did pass away. And it is unfortunate, a very strong voice and a bastion for conservative talk show and conservative principles, but then also a Christian as well. And so I would say thank you to Rush Limbaugh. I'm not really going to get into, I wanted to get into some of the harsh criticism we're seeing from the left and some of the downright evil things that they are saying and their response from this, but I don't want to politicize that. I don't want to get into all of that. I just simply want to pay that tribute to him as we move into other headlines as well. So really I would say the first story is going to be good old Cuomo and the situation we see with Andrew Cuomo. If you don't know, Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York, Chris Cuomo, the reporter at the CNN, no coverage, no special coverage. Andrew Cuomo doesn't get any special coverage, even though for the past year or so, Chris Cuomo has been absolutely fawning over Andrew Cuomo, giving him the absolute best coverage. And turns out, it wasn't so great. It wasn't so great. In fact, I have heard it stated, and I generally agree with this, that probably we had that first wave of COVID. New York was hit so badly, and it was so utterly failed. The entire system was such an utter failure that it is very possible that in that second wave, people were hailing Andrew Cuomo because there wasn't much of a second wave. And it is very possible that that is literally because all of the people who could get sick and pass away from COVID did in the first wave. And I mean that literally. I don't say that to make light of it, to make a joke of it. I literally mean that that is very possible, that tens of thousands of deaths, specifically in nursing homes, and it gets worse. And that is that he was hiding numbers. And so he's currently being investigated by the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI as well. The FBI over his coronavirus task force responses to the pandemic. This is according to the Associated Press is where I'm getting some of this information. No, the Times-Union, I apologize. And so the Times-Union gives out a report basically saying that over the past few weeks that it has come out that he was hiding a good bit of information from the public. Obviously very unfortunate. And Chris Cuomo now has been directed by CNN that he will no longer be covering his brother and how he's handled coronavirus in New York City. I have to say it. I gotta say it, guys. To all the listeners here, we have to admit, CNN finally did right and made the right decision by pulling Chris Cuomo off of reporting off of Andrew Cuomo. I don't understand how that hasn't been a thing for the past year, how no one is really talking about that in mainstream media, that someone is literally reporting on their brother, giving him great coverage when the numbers are not so great. In fact, that was before we even found out what we did. Anyways, not going to spend too much time on that, but I did want to update you on that as well. Things falling apart for Chris Cuomo and Andrew Cuomo, I should say, as well. But also Gavin Newsom. I actually don't have this in my notes. So I wanted to just bring this up to you that Gavin Newsom, if you remember a few episodes ago, I was mentioning how they're getting close to the number of signatures and to make sure to sign the petition or the recall program for Gavin Newsom. Well, they've hit the deadline. They needed 1.495 million signatures. They're well over 1.5. I want to say they're close to 2 million. You need to have a large number over because there can be duplicates, there can be mess ups, things like that. And so anyways, they passed the deadline. They have another few weeks, I want to say even as well. Yes, they have till mid-March. So they're continuing to even gather signatures still now, but there is now enough signatures. So now the process that will happen is the recall program itself will go through. They will verify the signatures. They'll kind of do their own research, make sure they have enough. Then they're going to actually send it to the government. The government, then California state government, will look it over. They will verify that there's enough signatures. And then from there, it will be put on the ballot, scheduled ballot, probably maybe this summer, maybe this fall. Again, and we will have a special election for Gavin Newsom. Someone will need to run against him, and he will need to win that election to serve the remainder of his term. If the opponent wins, then they serve out the remainder of that term through 2022, and then there's an election in 2022 where that individual would then run again. So anyways, that's how the system, that's what has happened. That's what we need to be looking forward to in the future. And still, if you haven't signed that petition, there's still time, and it is still needed to make sure that we have the required quota. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about what's going on in Texas. I think most people know, and I think these are all stories over the past few days that people know and they're aware of. And my apologies, I guess, just because we haven't been doing episodes over the past little bit talking about the news cycle. So I've been catching up, and I want to say this, and that is that sometimes, like I did over the past few days, break away a little bit from the news cycle, focused more on editing that episode or the video that you saw a few days ago. And it's good to unplug every once in a while, of course. I also want to say that that is hopefully what the niche is of the Glorious Rescue, that you don't have to be consistently bogged down in the news cycle, because I do it, I enjoy it, and I go through it and come through it, and I inform you of the headlines so that you can get the consolidated news cycle, as well as engage in deeper discussions that we will be in today's episode engaging in. So if you agree with that, if you enjoy that, and if you are grateful for that, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We got a few new subscribers of the past week or so make sure to hit that subscribe button, share it with others as well. I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much. So now we're going to be talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So you say, Josiah, you said we're talking about Texas and all of that, and then now you're saying we're talking about AOC, and that's because they go hand in hand. Because just when you think AOC can't get any worse, just when you think that there is a tragedy so big that we can at least all come together and not politicize, AOC comes in and politicizes it. She's the politicizer of all politicizers. What I'm referring to is roughly 4 million Texans without power. And the reason why is very simple. They have wind turbines. They have other clean energy sources that are not used to performing under such extreme cold temperatures, basically. And so they did have really like an Arctic front, very frigid temperatures come through out of nowhere, breaking decade-long records. And so they just had a large influx of very cold weather that they are not used to. Their wind turbines and a lot of their energy efforts are not able to withstand that type of temperature. And so they had over 4 million homes, 4 million people without power in Texas alone. Very simple, based off of the Texas energy system. Now, I say this because AOC is trying to politicize it, saying quite literally that, if they would have adopted the Green New Deal, then this wouldn't be a problem. The problem is that the things that are underperforming for them to have power are these clean energy solutions that AOC wants to implement, like solar panels. Solar panels are huge in Texas because there is a lot of sun, a lot of heat. Well, solar panels freeze over when it gets so cold. Wind turbines freeze over when it gets so cold. And these are the items that are producing such a power outage, and they have been out since Monday. And so for the past several days, almost a week now, counting 4 or 5 days or so, they have been out of power. It is slowly coming back on, but I just wanted to make that clear that things aren't what AOC says. Not that I think that you all as listeners are just taking her word for it, or even taking my word for it, because I will be linking more articles down in the description below for you to be able to see it, read it, and come to grips for yourself so that you don't have to take my word for it. Another thing you don't have to take my word for it, because it seems so unbelievably crazy, is quite literally that the mainstream media are buying headlines. What do I mean by that? We have found, based off of invoices from CNN, NBC, these mainstream media companies, that they quite literally paid an individual who has been known as an Antifa rioter, paid him thousands of dollars, and he was one of the individuals who breached the Capitol on January 6th. So again, I say this over and over every time I reference the event that happened at January 6th. I recommend the listener to go back to that episode to get more context, because I do not condone it. I think it was evil. I think it was wrong. I don't think it was this mass infiltration, but we do know there have been several confirmed Antifa members, as well as someone we now know was literally paid by CNN, NBC, an Antifa activist paid by these mainstream medias to go attend this, and this individual ended up being one of the Capitol breachers. One found a $35,000 invoice. Another one was a $2,300 invoice also as well. As if it doesn't get any worse, Sullivan, the individual who was paid by these companies, the individual's name was Sullivan, and he later appeared on CNN. Yes, on CNN, to do an on-air interview after the riots. So yes, he has been paid by mainstream media companies. I don't need to sit here and give you my opinion. I will simply give you that factual piece of information. Link the article below so you can read it for yourself, so that you can come to your own opinion on that. The degradation of mainstream media, the degradation of information dissemination in our country is quite overwhelming, quite staggering, as well as the left's hypocrisy. And what I mean by that is Minneapolis. If you remember, Minneapolis was one of the first places and municipalities to really rein in, decrease, if not defund completely, almost, and basically abolish their police force after the shooting that happened in May and all of the riots, the BLM riots that happened thereafter. Minneapolis was one of the first companies or municipalities, again, to do so, cutting out about $7.9 million from their budget for the police officers and for the police department. Well, now the city council just and it was specifically the city council that approved pulling these funds. Well, now the city council unanimously, a few months later, has approved putting $6.4 million back into funding the police department because the police have requested it. I want to say there were roughly around 638 officers. They were down 200 from what they normally were. Anyways, so the police department requested funds. The city council unanimously decided to give it to them after stripping it from them. Again, because this isn't going to make the headlines as much as it did back in May, in June, in July, whenever they were pushing this. They're just appeasing the crowd, appeasing the people, when we know that leaders are put up, in place, voted in by the consent of the governed, and placed there sometimes to curb and to rein in man's sinful nature, mob rule. Nevertheless, bowing to peer pressure, last statement or last headline I'm going to give to all of you, update in today's episode before moving into our end of show segment, is Trump, his acquittal. And I don't talk politics at work. In fact, I almost refuse to because I don't like getting myself into trouble. And my views can kind of get myself into trouble at workplaces, especially in the Bay Area where I live. Anyways, very simply put, Trump was acquitted. And I don't talk about this at work, but I had someone at work talking and ranting and raving about how Trump's going to he's not going to get acquitted. He's going to be indicted by the Senate. There's no way the Senate won't indict him because people are sick of it. And I just sat there like, sick of what? I think we're sick of politics in the House. We're sick of politics in the Senate. And there's no way that he's going to get a 2/3 majority. How in the world is 2/3 of the Senate going to vote to indict a former president, the former president, Donald Trump? Of course, I would be the stupid one if I were to say that there's no way that Donald Trump would get a 2/3 majority to indict him. I would have been the dumb one, but nevertheless, I was right. I knew that they're just here playing games, knowing that it's not going to happen. You got Republicans coming out and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to vote to indict him," and then falling on that, back and forth, both sides, all over the place. We know that the Senate is split 50-50. 7 Republicans voted to indict Trump as well, so that puts it at 57-43, if my math is correct, which sometimes is, sometimes isn't. It's not spot on, but it was a 57-43 vote. Biden's statement and Trump's statement, very interesting. Biden basically says, this is that the facts, the substance of his indictment should not have been disputed, because the horrible atrocities he has committed against our democracy. And then Trump basically, his statement was, "I'm back, baby. I'm back." He basically came out and said that he has much to share. He's excited for the journey that awaits us, coming together, moving forward, restoring greatness in our country. Anyways, Trump was acquitted, if you didn't already know. So I wanted to bring that to you, as well as going through all of those headlines. I know we had lots to cover. Again, we will be back here on Tuesday, as well as every single Tuesday and Friday to continue to update you on all that's in the news cycle. Everything that is in the here and now that you need to know to become and to stay a well-informed patriot. But now, before we end today's episode, we have to finish off with an end of show segment of the founding era. Welcome back to another segment of the founding era. Very simply put today, I want to talk about a simple person. This is one that I've been wanting to talk about for the past several episodes, but I haven't gotten the chance to, just simply because we've either been spending more time on the news cycle or we've had other types of videos and whatnot. Anyways, the individual is Governor Morris, and governor is not his title. That is his name. His first name is Governor, and his last name is Morris. He was the writer of the final draft of the Constitution of the United States. And I find this very interesting. This man is very interesting to me because, first and foremost, the average age of the quote-unquote founding fathers at the Constitutional Convention, when they sat down and planned and framed the foundations of our government, the average age of those men was 40 years old. I consider that to be young, middle-aged. These men were very wise, very well ahead of their years as well. And to think that men so young could do so much and institute a framework of government that has lasted for hundreds of years successfully, curbing man's sinful nature in regards to the governed and those governing as well, is quite astounding. Governor Morris, though, was only 35 years old, so even younger. Can you imagine 35 years old and you come up with the final draft of the Constitution at 35 years old? This makes him 14 years old when the Declaration of Independence was signed. So very young during the War for Independence, but 35 years old, also very young to write the Constitution of the United States of America. We know that James Madison is considered the father of the Constitution, and this means that he was the main contributor. He was the main author, if you will. But it was Governor Morris who literally sat down with a lot of James Madison's work, again, being the father of the Constitution, and he wrote out the final draft of that Constitution. I don't know if he was like the grammar Nazi of the bunch, but anyways, he was, and that's what his job was. He has many interesting works, his most notable being Observation on Government Applicable to the Political State of France, and Notes on the Form of a Constitution for France. And this is interesting because he was the very first U.S. minister to France, and then he was very involved in writing and talking about the French Revolution. And I think, contrasting the difference between the French Revolution and the American Revolution, that I consider more a war for independence and not necessarily a revolution or rebellion, if that makes sense. We've talked about that before on the show. But anyways, one of the statements that he makes in one of his works, this work here that I referenced, is the following statement. Quote, religion is the only solid basis of good morals. Therefore, education should teach the precepts of religion and the duties of man toward God. I love that statement. I love these statements from founders, biblical statements referencing the Bible. In fact, it has been found over the past few years. There was a recent study in the past few decades. I don't remember when the study came out. I would have to link it down below. But basically, between 1760 and 1800 or so, the first 50 to 100 years of our nation, the most cited and sourced document ever among our founding fathers was the Bible, of course. After that, were writers like John Locke, Montesquieu, and whatnot. But this would be one of those references. He also wrote to his mother, there is one comforter, capital C, who weighs our minutes and numbers out our days. And near the end of his life, he stated that he would soon, quote, descend towards the grave, full of gratitude to the giver of all good. I found that very interesting. These men were men who recognized God, who recognized the purpose and the duty that man has towards God. And if we have that duty, then it's our duty to institute a government according to his principles so that we can fulfill his desire for our lives. Very simple principles, very biblical principles as well. Principles that are foundational to our government, principles that I hope you would want to share. And if you do, continue to share these episodes. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Josiah Evertson, and this is The Glorious Rescue.